Good evening. I'm Leland Vittert. The sun comes up in Afghanistan about 30 minutes from now for Tuesday morning. And U.S. Special Forces and helicopter crews will start kitting up for the dangerous missions into Kabul to rescue desperate Americans beaten by the Taliban as they tried to make it to the airport. Here is one American trapped behind Taliban lines describing her desperation.
Hour by hour, it's getting more difficult. Even when the cars pass by, I feel like they're going to stop by the door and they're the Taliban and they're going to come in and kill us. I'm really scared.
We're going to hear more from her in a minute, along with the White House response to what's going on. We're also monitoring the coming government crackdown on the unvaccinated. Our medical and legal experts are going to explain the restrictions facing 100 million Americans on normal everyday activities now that the vaccine has been FDA approved. And there are more restrictions coming. Will those restrictions that come in the coming weeks or months perhaps move more to be vaccinated? But today, not one, but many terrorist groups threaten U.S. troops in Afghanistan. It's truly a race against time to get Americans and our allies out before an August 31st deadline. If not, the Taliban is saying the rules change.
Biden announced this agreement that until 31st of August they would withdraw all their military forces. So if they extend it, that means they are extending occupation. While there is no need for that, I think it will deteriorate the relation, that will create mistrust between us. If they are intent on continuing the occupation, so it will provoke a reaction.
Imagine that, mistrust from a terrorist group. Today, the White House admitted they don't know how many Americans they need to get out. Holly McKay is standing by on the Afghan border with the stories of some of those that are trapped. But we start with Dave Sears, former SEAL commander who's planned and executed a lot of missions inside Afghanistan, along with retired General David Deptula, with the dangers and challenges our troops face on the ground and in the air as well. Gentlemen, appreciate you being with us. Dave, to you first. ISIS-K, the Taliban, remnants of al-Qaeda, a bunch of other terrorists who were let out of the jails in Afghanistan. Now you've got U.S. troops heading into Kabul, both on the ground and in the air. Only a matter of time before we take casualties?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, you're definitely at risk. There's no way the Taliban can guarantee some kind of safety, nor should we trust them to. So all it takes is some rogue operators from ISIS who, it's in their interest to cause a lot of chaos and throw some more wrenches into this whole situation.
What do you think a terror attack by one of these groups would look like? Is it a surface-to-air missile or a suicide bomber?
It could be either. They could be going, the amount of munitions they have, they could be doing IEDs. They could do straight ambushes in the streets. I don't know that the Taliban has any control over ISIS or their ability to get in or sneak into even Taliban ranks. So you could see whatever form and opportunity they could. They could just do the old rocket barrages, random from afar that kind of hit some things and kind of don't, but it's still pretty dangerous.
Yeah, hits a C-17 loaded with fuel and people. You've got a whole different situation. General, you planned Operation Desert Storm, the air power there and shock and awe that worked pretty well. Is it too late to be able to use air power against the folks that Dave's talking about?
Well, no, it's not, Leland. As a matter of fact, one of our key advantages is our ability to provide 24/7 intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance of what's going on, and then be able to deliver critical strikes if necessary. But, the challenge is that there was a serious lack of planning and preparation prior to or during the buildup to the decision to actually remove our forces there. That is what has resulted in the situation that we now face. No, it's not too late to use air power. We're using it as we're speaking to monitor what's going on the part of the Taliban. But again, I go back to part of the challenge is we should have avoided getting to where we are. Now we are where we are. So you've got a lot of very savvy American forces both from the land services as well as the contingency response groups from the Air Force. Who
it seems as so many of them are just waiting for the order to go, and it's one that the military has talked about having all of these options and wanting to have stayed on the ground in order to allow the civilians to evacuate. We understand the White House overruled a number of that advice. A lot of that advice was given by Jake Sullivan, who seems to be putting his trust in the Taliban. Take a listen.
We're in touch with the Taliban daily. We're in touch with our allies and partners. We're reviewing our progress in this particular operation, which we feel has been substantial over the past few days, and the president will make his own determination.
Dave, you dealt with the Taliban for an awfully long time. Do you think the national security advisors clear-eyed, shall we say, about who the Taliban is that we're dealing with every day?
No, not at all. But these are the same guys who trust Iran and think that Iran's going to abide by, the rules and negotiations that we lay out. Absolutely not. The Taliban is playing a game. They know they are. We need to take back the advantage and show that you don't get to draw red lines, Taliban. We are still a world power, and we have to demonstrate that, or else people are going to be drawing red lines for us all over the map.
General, back to the issue of air power. As I understand it, the Taliban now has captured the Afghan Air Force, which was provided by the United States, Black Hawk helicopters, and the number of single-engine ground attack planes, which doesn't sound perhaps like a big deal. But what does that firepower mean for the Taliban if they figure out how to use it?
Well, it's something to be concerned with, but frankly, we talked about options. We should take those options away from the Taliban. That means destroying that equipment. We can do that in 24 hours if the decision was made to do that. So I kind of go back to the fact that the president's got a lot of options and the military is presenting him a lot of options, but he has to make the decision on which one of those options to use to prohibit the Taliban from being able to capitalize on the equipment that was left behind.
Yes, so many of those options he seems not to be willing to take. Dave, last question for you real quick. What concerns you the most about what the Taliban has and what ISIS-K may have also acquired as it relates to the safety of our troops on the ground right now?
I mean, one of the biggest things that they have is they've acquired a lot of night vision equipment, and they have some communications equipment. Now, we'll still be able to get all our stuff through encrypted and around them, but the night vision becomes really concerning. What they can do with night vision and thermal, and then beyond that, that's the tactical battlefield. Beyond that, strategically, what can be reverse engineered and countered by China and Russia and sold off to these guys. So they can't fly a Black Hawk, but they can turn it over to them and take it apart.
Excellent.
So it's all very concerning.
And we know the Chinese are already in Afghanistan already, making friends with the Taliban and celebrating our loss there. We're going to get to the international component in this a little later in the show. Commander Dave Sears, General David Teptula, gentlemen, thank you both. We appreciate it.
You bet, Leland.
All right, there appears to be a significant and perhaps growing disconnect between the ground truth in Afghanistan and the White House talking points. Take a listen.
There are no Americans stranded is the White House's official position on what's happening in Afghanistan right now.
I'm just calling you out for saying that we are stranding Americans in Afghanistan when we have been very clear that we are not leaving Americans who want to return home. We are going to bring them home. And I think that's important for the American public to hear and understand.
All right. But while the White House contends that they are not intentionally abandoning Americans or our allies, brave Americans we understand and have heard from are still trapped behind enemy lines. Now more from the woman you heard at the top of the show describing her situation.
Hour by hour, it's getting more difficult. Even when the cars pass by, I feel like they're going to stop by the door and they're the Taliban and they're going to come in and kill us. I'm really scared. Please help me whenever it's the soonest.
You feel for her. Over the course of the past week, a brave independent journalist has been reporting for us on the ground in Afghanistan, sharing what she has been seeing on the front lines as desperate Afghans and Americans fight to get out. Now we bring you some of her reporting.
People, they can lose their life in 1 second because you don't know what's going to be happening and you don't know where the attack is going to come from. A lot of people there and you don't know what's going to be happening in 1 second.
It's a voice of somebody else stranded there. Holly McKay joins us as she has for a number of nights at this time. Holly, nice to see you. We appreciate it. As the White House talks about this and argues on the semantics, are there Americans stranded in Afghanistan?
There are definitely Americans stranded in Afghanistan and people that have American passports, as well as people that are approved to come to America. I can't tell you, Leland, every day people are reaching out, just desperate. They're telling me that they've got approvals, they've got numbers, but there's just no physical way for them to get through the crowds to the airport. And each day it just seems to be becoming worse and worse and just a greater nightmare. And they're absolutely petrified for their lives. And they're just begging for some kind of a pickup location or escort into the airport because they just physically cannot get there, and it's terrifying. The last people that I know that actually had success getting into the airport actually had to go through a massive sewage canal to get there. So basically, they had to wade through Kabul sewage to be rescued from the other side, and that to me is just not acceptable for any sort of civilized quote unquote operation.
Yeah, well, there seems to be a lot that's not acceptable about the operation. Certainly not the bravery of those who are carrying it out, but perhaps the planning and orders before. You talked about people who were trying to get to the airport. We have a soundbite that you got from one of them. We'll play that.
And I'm stuck here and I can't go to the airport. Many times I tried my best. I went there and again I came back home. I was alone and lots of people were there and everywhere was shooting and firing, especially the army. I don't know where the shoots and where the fires are coming from. And every people, even I saw from my eyes, in front of my eyes, the people were injured and the American forces was putting gas on the people and everyone was shouting, everyone is scared.
Can just imagine if that was my sister, had been an aid worker in Afghanistan, now trapped, how really desperate not only are those inside country, but also their family members back home.
Absolutely, and it's terrifying for people to see their loved ones in such a place of fear and be on the outside looking in and just unable to physically help them. And there are many Afghans in that position.
Do you get the feeling that there's anybody who can help these people, or is it going to take a U.S. military operation of sort of aggressive in large proportions that we haven't considered to help them?
Unfortunately, from what I've seen so far, Leland, I really do think it's going to take a larger U.S. contingency to actually leave the wire, to create a physical, secret pickup place where everybody can be kind of mobilized into different small safe houses where the U.S. troops can then physically go in.
It's one thing to do that for a couple of hundred people. It's another thing to do it for a few thousand or tens of thousands of Afghans who have visas to come to the United States and have been promised safe passage by the Taliban. When you're talking to your sources in the Taliban, as odd as that sounds, but I know you have them, is there any interest on their part to let these people go, or do they view brutalizing their own citizens and Americans who are still kept there as still good public policy?
You know, I think the Taliban itself is a very fractured organization. I think that you have leaders and perhaps different elders that are sort of trying to put quite a PR spin on things and trying to say that they aren't the same Taliban they were 20 years ago. That remains to be seen. But I think that there are just, the Taliban is so big and it's just so vast and there are so many rogue elements and so many people with different intentions. I mean, you have thousands of people that have been released out of prison. Taliban people that have been in prison perhaps for a decade or longer, and suddenly they're out on the streets and making the most of their freedom. And really a lot of the leadership is still in Doha, so there really isn't a centralized command for them that are giving orders anyway. So I think it's sort of it's just not possible for anyone to control every single member within the Taliban, and I think we're seeing that now. And I think that I really don't see a way forward for a lot of the Americans without that physical support from our troops right now. It's too fractured.
Well, it's noteworthy that your perspective about the Taliban on the ground is very different than the perspective the White House is putting out in terms of being in contact with them and making deals with them. So we'll let the audience decide who to believe on that one. Holly McKay, thank you very much. We'll check back with you later in the week.
Thanks, Leland.
Domestic politics now. One of the most powerful Democrats in America is being skewered by his own party. Get this, there's backlash growing against Rahm Emanuel. He's President Biden's nominee to be the ambassador to Japan, former mayor of Chicago, congressman, and also, in addition to that, worked for Barack Obama as his chief of staff. But now Emanuel is facing heat over his handling of the fatal police shooting of Laquan McDonald in 2014. It has often been called one of the worst police shootings ever that was caught on video. A police officer shot the knife-wielding teen 16 times as he was trying to escape. Critics say Emanuel helped cover up the Laquan McDonald shooting and pushed to keep the video under wraps. The officer involved in this shooting was later convicted of murder. Join us now, Anna Devellante, Chicago investigative journalist, WGN radio host. Anna, good to see you. Boy, who would have ever thought that Rahm Emanuel would be in the target of Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to understand where that all comes from. I got to tell you, Leland, I was on air when I heard this cross Friday afternoon, and any of us who have covered Rahm Emanuel over the years when he was mayor of Chicago, I think we're sort of shaking our head and saying this is typical Rahm stuff. I mean, this is a politician who became known for commonly using the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. And here we are, a Friday afternoon news dump when the whole world is focused, rightly so, on Afghanistan and the horrors and the pictures coming out of there, some of which you're featuring even still tonight. But Friday afternoon, a controversial pic like this comes out so that it would, I don't know.
There's a reason the White House releases controversial picks on Friday afternoons. I was in the briefing room a number of times when it happened, but this one seems unusual. Do you get the sense that the White House and others were gunning for this fight and knew it was going to be controversial? Cori Bush, a member of the squad, tweeted, Rahm Emanuel covered up the murder of Laquan McDonald. He must be disqualified from ever holding an appointed position in any administration. A video there of Rahm Emanuel and Joe Biden worked very closely together in the Obama administration. Do you get the feeling that the White House understood how controversial this was going to be?
I do. I really do. And, you know, I think about it. It's to say that this was a pivotal moment for Chicago is an understatement. But to say that this was a meaningful moment for police reform calls across the United States, I think is very true. And you got to put this whole thing in context if you think about what happened here. You had a black teenager, 16 years old, shot 16 times by a police officer in a situation that didn't at all fit the narrative of fear for his life that we hear about so often when officers fire their weapons. This is a situation that the public here in Chicago is completely lied to. It was this enormous, elaborate cover-up.
The accusation is Rahm Emanuel helped with the cover-up, therefore he should not be the ambassador to Japan. And it's noteworthy that he's being now sort of held to account for something that he actually did, and people agree that he did, rather than things he may or may not have said and the like, as we've seen in the past. But the people you'd expect to be really sticking up for him is those he worked with in the Obama administration. President Obama, members of the Illinois congressional delegation, and the like. Has anybody supported him through this weekend?
Senator Dick Durbin has stood up for him. David Axelrod has. Some of the more moderate members of the party have said, like, let's look at his full body of work. Let's look at his lifetime of service. I just think for the Democratic Party, you can understand the conflict here, where police reform is front and center in America. This is a moment of reckoning. And here's someone who perpetuated lies to the entire city of Chicago about what happened that day. Journalists were actually told that Laquan McDonald lunged in the direction of that officer multiple times, and that never happened. Those lies kept going for a year until an independent journalist managed to let that body cam video come out. And we all sort of sat back and said, my God, this is what happened. This isn't what we were told. A $5 million settlement was granted by City Council and Mayor Emanuel for the family of Laquan McDonald in exchange for their silence. I mean, those are pretty damning facts, I think. So you can understand where the criticism comes from in this environment where police reform is front and center to that agenda.
Yeah, it seems like we're a long way from getting any kind of whip count on whether there's enough Democratic support for the nomination. But we've seen the White Houses in the past pull nominees or nominees bow out when something like this comes out. Anna, this is going to be a lot to cover on this. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Leland.
Great story. We appreciate it. When we come back, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on defense, his new COVID war over the use of treatments to help patients. But first, President Biden facing a political crisis. And high-ranking Democrats appear to, shall we say, be tone deaf. There's Chuck Schumer dancing through the weekend. We'll talk about the optics of this when we come back. Between the ongoing agony in Afghanistan, people dying literally to try and get out. And there's floods in Tennessee that's killed almost a dozen Americans. And then there was Hurricane Henry that came ashore. It's been a grim few days, but Democrats are starting to worry about how politics as usual looks in this time of crisis. Over the weekend, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi spoke at a beautiful outdoor California fundraiser, maskless, complete with flowers, wine, and service staff. We have pictures of that somewhere. And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer danced with comedian Stephen Colbert during the New York homecoming concert. This video was widely mocked on social media for a number of reasons. Today's New York Times sums it up. There's the quote: Democrats fear that if the pandemic or situation in Afghanistan continues to worsen, their party may lose the confidence of moderate swing voters who lifted them to victory in 2020. Progressive professor Jason Nichols teaches at the University of Maryland and studies these things. Joins us now. We appreciate it. Jason, is this the perfect political storm for the progressive agenda?
Well, no, I don't think so. It is a difficult moment, particularly with Afghanistan, but I think most people are putting this in context. They see that there are 4 administrations that are all responsible for this. We know the deal in February of 2020. We know, of course, the Obama administration had an opportunity to end this war after they killed OBL. And we know the Bush administration had opportunities to get out and probably should not have gone in or should have taken a different route. So I think that people are going to put this in context. There are always going to be, in 2022, just like there was in 2018 and in other moments where you have a new president.
Jason, I had to argue with you. Even Donna Brazile, though, said, former chair of the DNC said that if you don't change the policy, 7 months in, you own the policy. It's awfully difficult to blame the withdrawal from Afghanistan and how horribly it's been handled on George W. Bush or Barack Obama. Voters aren't going to buy that.
I think that there were. I think, number one, you wouldn't have been in a 20-year war if it weren't for the W. Bush administration. And, of course, Obama, he killed OBL, and that was a really important moment. But he passed the buck. And the Trump administration probably, I would argue, capitulated, and H.R. McMaster would agree with me.
I thought we hired Joe Biden not to, everybody elected Joe Biden to return competency and America was coming back, and instead you're presiding over just an epic debacle. Forget the policy of moving out of Afghanistan. We can all agree the way it's done was just dismal, right?
Yeah, I think it could have been done better. I think that they misjudged how quickly the Taliban was going to come back. I think they misjudged how unpopular the Afghan government was. And we also realized that in February of 2020 that they didn't include the Afghan government in those discussions with the Taliban, which, of course, delegitimized them to their own people. So they didn't even fight the Taliban when they came around. The Taliban came with bribes.
True.
And they were able to just move in. So they misjudged that, and that certainly is on them.
You study these things, so you can break this down. A poll conducted by NBC News last week. So this is as Afghanistan's falling apart. The president's approval rating slipped to 49%, now down below 50%. Disapproval numbers went up to 48%. Competency as a leader, CBS News poll, competent 56% in April, down to 49%. Focused 56%, down to 48%. Effective 55%. Down to 47. Okay, so you're talking about a 6 or 7 point drop in a week. Is that concerning?
I think it's concerning, but we still have a lot of space. We know that these things change week by week, and if the Democrats are able to pass legislation once they get back, they're on break right now. Once they get back, they can pass infrastructure. If they pass the American Families Act and, families start getting universal pre-K and you start getting free community college and roads and bridges are getting fixed, I think that the American people will sway the other way. So we know that there's a long ways before the next election.
Yeah, domestic policies, especially free stuff, can do a lot. I'm interested in your take on Kamala Harris, who's been MIA, for lack of a better term, over the past 10 days. The first question she got on Afghanistan, you might say didn't go so well. Take a listen.
Madam Vice President, what's your response to reports of Americans?
Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things. First, Afghanistan. We couldn't have a higher priority right now, and in particular, our priority is making sure that we safely evacuate American citizens, Afghans who worked with us, Afghans at risk, including women and children.
That laugh just seems to be troubling to so many.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think it's a nervous tick that she has, honestly. It's something that, you know, a lot of people you probably know, that I know, they laugh at inappropriate moments because they feel a little bit uncomfortable. So I wouldn't necessarily hold that against her. I'm not even certain that she heard the question. As you can tell, that it was very difficult to hear. You hear jet engines. She went over to make a statement to the press while they were, you know, being the press and going crazy. So I wouldn't necessarily hold that against her. I think it's just one of those viral gotcha moments where her political opponents are going to try to jump all over it. But if you take it in context, she made a good statement that, you know, they're doing everything they can in Afghanistan.
Yeah. On the way to Vietnam, where she's headed next. Professor, always appreciate the conversation. It's reasoned and thoughtful as usual.
Thanks, Leland.
All right.
Same to you.
Now to the battle of the absurd in Florida. The absurd, it often is battled about in Florida. It's a known fact that Regeneron works very, very well to help COVID patients. So well, in fact, it helped treat President Trump, and the government invested in developing and manufacturing the drug. But that appears not to be enough for the Associated Press. So now there is a showdown between the AP and the Florida governor over what he calls a, quote, brazen political attack story. In a letter to the news organization today, DeSantis says the story was, quote, a partisan smear piece. The story reported that one of the governor's donors, a hedge fund company, invests in a company making Regeneron for the treatment of COVID. DeSantis has promoted the treatment, perhaps because it works and set up clinics across his state to give people Regeneron if they get COVID. Here's the story from the AP, which was published last Wednesday. DeSantis top donor invests in COVID drug governor promotes. The AP did point out that it's not unusual for hedge funds to have other investments. Here now for the full story on this, News Nation Miami correspondent Brian Enton, who's actually outside one of the places that provides Regeneron to people who need it. And Brian, it seems as though you're saying, your reporting is that it does work.
Yeah, and it's been very, very busy here, Leland. This back and forth between Governor DeSantis and the AP has been going on since last week. And what really seems to have gotten under the governor's skin is not so much the content of the entire article, but it's that headline that you just read. The governor does not like the headline. He sent a letter to the AP today expressing his disgust. I want to read you part of this letter. This is what he said. This story is a baseless conspiracy theory. While the public's trust in corporate outlets like the AP is at historic lows, there is no doubt that some will decline to seek life-saving treatment as a result of the AP's inflammatory headline. So is the headline technically true? Yes. But is it fair? Well, you really have to look at the context of this whole thing. There is a top DeSantis donor. His name is Ken Griffin. He's donated about $10 million to political committees associated with DeSantis. He is also the CEO of a company called Citadel. That's the hedge fund. They own a very, very, very small percentage of Regeneron. Less than 1/10 of 1% of Citadel's value is Regeneron. In fact, they own way more of Pfizer and Moderna, which is why the governor has been very, very upset about this whole thing.
Yeah, getting back to the point, though, that I think is most interesting is you're there, and as I understand it, Florida has set up free clinics to get a transfusion of Regeneron, because it has to be given through IV, and there's a lot of sick people who show up there who pretty quickly feel better.
Yeah, they're very busy at this site where we are in Miami. There was a 2-hour wait today because so many people showed up. There's about a dozen of these sites throughout the country. 21 minutes, they put you into a chair, you're hooked up to an IV. If you go with the early onset of symptoms, so you can't be very, very sick and have had COVID for a week or two. You have to go in the beginning to get the best results. And according to the studies, 70% decrease in symptoms and in hospitalization with Regeneron.
Wow. Hard to blame Governor DeSantis for promoting something that works 70% of the time for people in bad shape. Brian, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Leland.
When we come back, potential new trouble for the unvaccinated as the FDA gives formal approval to one shot today. We're discussing how your life can change if you don't get the vaccine. I'm on social media at Leland Vittert. We'll see you there.
If you're a business leader, a nonprofit leader, a state or local leader who has been waiting for full FDA approval to require vaccinations, I call on you now to do that. Require it. Do what I did last month. Require your employees to get vaccinated or face strict requirements.
That's President Biden today calling on private businesses to move faster on requiring vaccines for workers. This comes just after the FDA this morning formally announced that the Pfizer COVID vaccine was approved, opening the door for the government to crack down on the unvaccinated. There are a lot of unvaccinated people in America, some 100 million at last count. So we're going to put aside the debate over whether to get the shot or not, because that is a personal decision. The question becomes what the government will and can do to you if you decide not to get the shot. From the workplace to social life to everything we love doing daily, the FDA approval gives the government, schools, and private companies wide latitude in restricting what the unvaccinated cannot do. Vaccine mandates, as we've reported a number of times, are working because vaccine rates are up, which means more of them are likely coming. Andrew Stoltman is an adjunct law professor at Northwestern University, and Dr. Joseph Ladapo is an associate professor of medicine at UCLA who studies public health. Gentlemen, we appreciate you both being here. Thank you. Doctor will be with you in just 1 second. All right, Andrew. FDA approval means that now the government can take away how many personal freedoms?
Virtually everything. It surprises people, but we have Supreme Court law going all the way back to 1905 that gives the state governments virtually unfettered discretion to do anything except coming into your house and requiring you to get a vaccine. But they can do stuff like fine people. They can do stuff like require the military, students, everyone else get vaccinated. And I think that's what we're going to see going forward.
And just the fact that the FDA now has officially approved it changes the whole dynamic.
I don't even know if it changes the whole dynamic. I think it gives a little more cover to the federal government to be able to say, look, we're going to require you to get vaccinated because now it's approved. But they've always had this power going all the way back to 1905.
It's a lot easier to do it, as you point out, once it's been approved. Dr. Ladapo, you study these things in public health. As you've looked back in history, and perhaps even over the past couple of months as we've seen this, do having mandates encourage the anti-vaxxers to get vaccinated, or do they just dig their heels in more?
Yeah, I think we're actually going to see both. We're going to see people who feel that, hey, it's just not worth the trouble. This is becoming too difficult and too costly to avoid the vaccine. And we're going to see people, because we're Americans, and this is part of it's part of the tradition and the roots of this country, who are definitely going to dig their heels in more.
So they dig their heels in more, Andrew. The federal government is terrible at almost everything. The DMV is awful at its job. The federal government is not set up for some massive vaccine passport. How do you enforce something like this?
Well, enforcement is hard, but at the end of the day, it really comes down to the people, right? We have 15% of people out there right now who don't wear seatbelts. We got 14% of people who smoke. So at some point, the federal government can only do so much. They can't go into somebody's house, right? They can't do that. They got to try to convince these people to do it. They're never going to get everybody to do it, but they got to give the incentives to try to get these people who are ignoring all medical science to go in and get vaccinated.
Yeah, we're actually trying to get a congressman on who proposed a bill that would require vaccines on every commercial airline flight. Dr. Ladapo, we hear Andrew here talking about 14, 15%. Conversely, is 85% of America vaccinated enough to end COVID?
You know, I think two things. One thing is that the idea of ending COVID has always been the flaw in our health policy approach. You know, this has always been a virus that we should have adapted to live with. We've gotten closer to that. You know, we've moved from a lockdown mentality to, you know, trying to live with it, taking measures to reduce risk, get people early treatment. And which highlights the fact that the lockdowns were essentially a waste. The other thing that's important here that's really actually very critical to the issue of these mandates and is being ignored is the fact that we have more data now that shows that there's been declining effectiveness of these vaccines. So if you remember back, the idea behind the mandates, it wasn't to help people protect themselves. Obviously, that's a wonderful thing to do. It was to slow the spread. That was the main idea behind the mandates, behind the masks, behind the social distancing. It's to prevent the spread. So we have data now that very clearly shows, and is not being discussed about in discussions about mandates, that, you know, it turns out that yes, you know, so far the vaccines do reduce the risks of infection, but that risk of that protection is waning. So this goal of preventing the spread is getting further and further in the future. So the idea that we should be trying to eliminate COVID and the vaccines are going to get us there, it's just not supported by the evidence that's available right now.
COVID zero is hard to find. This sort of comes back in a lot of ways, and you've talked about this a number of times on the show, Doctor, about messaging and optics. This past weekend, Mayor de Blasio in New York City held what they called a massive comeback concert amid the Delta surge. Did not exactly go as planned because it got rained out. And then the mayor of New York, who has been Mr. COVID, Mr. Lockdown, Mr. Vaccine mandates, said this.
Move to somewhere indoors briefly, nearby. We're going to get you an update shortly. We hope to bring it back shortly and finish the whole show, okay? Get someplace safe right now.
Okay, Mayor de Blasio sending everybody from the outdoor concert inside. Andrew Stoltman, does sound bites like that hurt the government's case as they try to enforce all these rules on all of us? Can you play that in court and say, no dice?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some mixed messaging. And I think what a lot of people are missing is it's not just going to be the federal government. We got to get the employers involved. And to Biden's credit, he's trying to do that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that your employer can say, absolutely, you have to get vaccinated or you can't work here. And people say, wait a minute, I don't have to do that. But legally, they can. So the businesses, the
I don't have to tell you this, though. There's a lot of places you can buy those CDC cards online. You show that to your employer. How does anybody enforce anything anymore? It's like a fake ID at a bar.
Yeah, there will be cheaters, definitely. But look, I think the solution is going to come not just from the government, but from these businesses. If businesses require the vaccine, people are going to do it to keep their jobs.
Well, great point. Appreciate you being here. Dr. Ladapo, always good to see you, sir. Looking forward to a time that you can be in studio as well. It'll be a lot of fun. See you then. Up next, a closer look at how our allies, even our enemies, are reacting to the disaster in Afghanistan.
Let me tell you, you're sitting in Beijing or you're sitting in Moscow. Are you happy we left? They'd love nothing better for us to continue to be bogged down there, totally occupied with what's going on.
Moscow and Beijing pretty happy with how we left. As we reported on Friday, the president seems willfully ignorant that the world's views of America have changed over the past 10 days. Need evidence? Well, just look in today's New York Times. In Afghanistan, China is ready to step into the void. The speed and scope of the Taliban's takeover in Afghanistan have prompted introspection in the West over what went wrong and how, after billions of dollars spent on a 20-year war effort, it could all end. China, though, is looking forward. It is ready to step into the void left by the hasty U.S. retreat to seize a golden opportunity. That was not written by a Republican angry with President Biden. It was written by a retired colonel in China's People's Liberation Army and is a toned-down version of the rhetoric in the Global Times, the Communist Party's mouthpiece, that has spent the past week celebrating America's defeat in Afghanistan. Defeat is their word, not mine, although it is perhaps apt. Brett Bruin knows a lot about dealing with America's allies and enemies. He ran the State Department Center for Global Engagement under President Obama. Brett, good to see you as always. Last week, you had an op-ed that said Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, needs to resign in disgrace. Isn't it his job to tell the president, gee, our allies don't trust us and our enemies are kind of laughing at us over what's happened in Afghanistan?
Leland, look, I mean, the job of the National Security Advisor is to serve it straight to the president. He has got to be able to have that honest conversation, not what we're hearing, unfortunately, at a lot of these press briefings, both that Jake Sullivan, again, this afternoon gave, as well as the president, which is trying to put a positive spin on things. But, you know, unfortunately, our allies, I think, are tiring of this kind of rhetoric. What they want to hear is the truth. What they want is some acknowledgement, both of what went wrong and how it's going to get fixed.
The vice president is in Singapore right now, and if she gave any solace to the Singapore prime minister, who is a strong ally of the United States and a vital one, considering where Singapore is, you couldn't tell. Take a listen.
Countries make calculations and take positions, and they have to make recalculations and adjust their positions from time to time. Sometimes it can be done smoothly, sometimes there are hiccups, sometimes there's things go awry and take time to put right.
I got 30 seconds. Translate the diplomatic speak for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a recovering diplomat, what I'm hearing is that age-old trick of just describing the problem, well, not, putting your finger on the scale too much. Obviously, he doesn't want to offend his guest. He doesn't want to break ties with the United States. So he just, gazes at the problem and provides a circumlocucious way of describing it.
Yeah, miscalculations and recalculations. You have to imagine there's a number of folks who are wondering that if they call, be it the NATO allies or be it the Singapore or be it the Taiwanese leaders, they have to wonder if when they call, they'll get the same treatment America's allies in Afghanistan did. Brett, we're going to have to leave it there. Have you back later in the week as things develop.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be right back.